All right, what is happening, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It's me, your boy London, back here with another video by Fantastic Hip Hop. So recently, I've been seeing all over Twitter that Drake has been, Drake and Academics have been, trying to do some damage control, considering the album sales numbers for some sexy songs for you, and currently they are, I don't know if it's really crashing out. I wouldn't call it crashing out, but there's a lot of Drake fans making excuses, and DJ Academics making all sorts of excuses. I know that numbers isn't really something I really care about personally for me, but considering that Drake fans have been using numbers as a standpoint to say how good an artist is as a whole, and considering that Drake always gets high sales numbers compared to other rappers, and now that he has a lower sales number than Kendrick, it just seems like, I don't know, they're upset. So that's all I have to say about that. So let's get into this. This is why Drake is crashing over his first week sales numbers, and let's see what Fantastic Hip Hop is saying about this.
Now, when it comes to Drake,
Holy shit.
after everything that has been going on with SSS for You, we have finally gotten sales projections for how this thing is doing, and with what we have seen, Drake is projected to put up one of the worst weeks of his entire career by far. And now what is clear from this is that both when it comes to Drake's status as a top rapper and star, his spot is gone there, because he isn't just getting outperformed by Kendrick Lamar now, but also so many other rappers as well. But also when it comes to the case that Drake is trying to claim about him being sabotaged by the entire industry and his label, that Drake is also straight up lying about that.
Yeah, I don't think he's getting sabotaged. I think he's really I guess public opinion, and just how public is themselves, fans, people don't really care for Drake right now at this current point in time. Maybe in the near future he might be, relevant again. Well, he's not irrelevant, but he will be like in the spotlight again for getting all these high sales numbers. So we'll see.
Which overall has made every single thing for Drake never look worse. And now before we go any further into this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. And just as I have said in my past few videos, the Drake fans are still mad at me for telling the truth, and it's only getting worse, so please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and it is really more needed than ever. So now when it comes to Drake and these numbers, we have finally gotten those first week projections for this 21 song mess he released with Party Next Door, and what this album is expected to put up is 250,000 copies moved in its first week, which in that 28,000 are from pure copies.
And honestly, that's still good. So I don't see the whole issue with it, but I guess it's because Kendrick got more numbers on his release, considering that he didn't have any promo for it. He just dropped it whenever, so, hey.
Which, before we go any further into this, keep in mind that GNX just did 247,000 months after its release this week.
Golly.
While these opening numbers may not seem the worst for other artists, and if we compare them to Drake's Honestly Nevermind album, they are actually better. When you just understand how the streaming models work and how these numbers can become very misleading quickly as artists like Drake try to play this game to give themselves the best numbers possible, you'll clearly see that with the truth these numbers hold, they are terrible and the worst Drake has ever had, as all in all, they are clearly indicating that Drake has lost more than we could have ever expected from this beef, and even with the same methods that gave him massive streaming debuts in the past with bad albums like For All the Dogs and CLB, these same old games did not work here. And now when it comes to just how bad this has all gotten for Drake, I don't even need to try and explain how serious this downfall is at this point, because none other than Big Ac put it into perspective for us of how much of a flop this thing is for Drake, as he went on a massive rant where he was trying to cope with the fact that even with an entire new album, Drake has continued to lose because things are still getting a lot worse for them. And now what Ac did that embarrassed everybody was try to cope with these numbers in some of the most ridiculous ways possible, like saying the performance of collab albums always meet in the middle of the respective artist's popularity, which in of itself, Ac explaining numbers...
that doesn't make any sense. I know Academics is trying to do damage control, but Drake is a big artist. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Regardless of whatever artist Drake is collabing with, it's still Drake on the album, so I'm sure people are still going to try and tap in because it's Drake. It doesn't matter what the other artists, how many numbers they get normally, because everyone used to say you get Drake stimulus package, you get a feature with Drake, so your numbers are going to be higher than they usually are. So I don't understand that, but whatever.
and really trying to justify them is something that he has never done. And overall, with this claim he is making, it is an absolute lie, and even with Drake himself, this rule he is trying to apply here was not true when Drake made albums with people like Future and 21 Savage, as those records put up massive numbers, so
Facts.
what's the difference here? Of course, other than the fact that Drake just did not deliver a musical experience that was worthwhile to the people. And now between this ridiculous rule Ak is trying to make, and him admitting that he was hiding releasing the early projections before this, which were around 175,000, along with so many other pathetic and desperate posts. I mean, when you see the ridiculous things that Ak has tried to do to explain how this is somehow a victory for Drake, I mean, winners don't have to explain themselves this much, and neither do people who are not trying to change the perception of the reality we are all seeing, and especially after these same people were calling Kendrick Lamar doing 319,000 first week of flop themselves. Using their logic, this thing is even worse than we could have ever expected.
And that's the crazy part. Apparently 319K is a flop these days. That is crazy to say. I don't understand what's going on with Drake fans and their cope, but this is crazy. And it's so funny to see this blow up in their faces, considering the numbers that Drake got with P&D. That's so funny.
And now with this 250,000, what makes this so bad and really not comparable to what Kendrick Lamar did at all is that, first off, beyond the fact that GNX just did 247,000 the week before this album dropped, which is just showing the longevity that record is having, which of course, while this is boosted by the Super Bowl, for it to rival Drake's first week numbers, it's overall something that no other artist has done, and it is really a sentiment to the quality of that project. And in addition to this, when you understand that GNX is a 12-track album, which meant that it overall gained less streams than albums that are much longer than it.
Oh my god, that even hits even harder if you think about it, because that's a 21-track album.
And of course, in this entire era of...
I didn't even think about that, I'll be honest with you.
Streaming, rappers and artists like Drake make their albums so much longer intentionally to run up these numbers as much as they can. Kendrick not following this and only worrying about making a record full of great songs and not ever thinking about the numbers and still seeing the success he did really just puts GNX and Kendrick in a league of their own, as the numbers he did with such a small track list is something that no other artist in this era of hip-hop has come close to. And really, it's something that most artists in general would never even consider doing because they do not believe in their own craft enough to have this type of success without bending the rules. And really, just to put into perspective how bad all of this really is for Drake in this album, GNX did over 360 million streams with just 12 songs, while Drake's album is looking like it's going to do around 150 million with 21 songs, which of course adds 9 more streams to each listen through. Which then of course gives these platforms more music to put everywhere. And again, just to put things into perspective, if Kendrick's album had this many songs, well, there's no perfect calculation. If you break down how many people had to listen to GNX for it to reach the number of streams that it did, with nearly double the track list size, it could have done around 600 million streams, which would be a record. And that's the real difference of where these two rappers...
And to attest to GNX's album, like, the replay value on that album is crazy. I ain't gonna lie to you. I've been listening to Peekaboo every single day. At least once a day. So I'm sure there's other songs that other people are playing every day, because the replay value of that whole album is it's immaculate.
Are at. And so with Drake now doing Honestly Nevermind numbers with an album that is as long as For All the Dogs, the first week numbers show an almost 50% decrease in people listening to Drake, and there are no excuses around this because the album did get pushed by the industry despite what Drake is saying. Because we have all seen it at the front of platforms, but it just did not get listened to as much as Drake records in the past did, which has been made very clear by the fact that GNX is already out streaming it daily and the record just came out.
Wow.
And overall, as Drake's numbers are going down faster than we have ever seen, very similar to what happened earlier this year with Lil Baby and his album When. Despite bringing in lower numbers with this record than he did in the past, his team was still able to prop this thing up and do the work it needed to so that it got a #1 debut, and that so its numbers looked strong when it dropped. But now, as we have seen in the following weeks, and again in this industry, it's hard to fake numbers for this long, and you will always find out the truth at some point. And the music is just not as good, and therefore it has fallen off way quicker than his last albums have as a whole. And with this album from Drake and Party, I am sure when it comes to people actually...
That's sad to see, man. I'm rooting for Lil Baby still, man. I ain't gonna lie to you. It's sad to see.
Listening and tapping into this record, this is exactly what we are going to see, because in every single way possible, everything for Drake is really showing that after this beef now, from streams to total albums moved, he is about 50% of what he was worth. And now while if Drake was still doing these numbers and was just okay with where he was at, there would be nothing left to say about this. As Drake is still the guy who thinks he's bigger than the industry and who wants a deal that even Taylor Swift does not have, and that's why he's gotten so deep into the problems he currently is in with his label. I mean, what is clear going forward is that these types of numbers just do not allow you to walk around like you are better than the rest of the industry, because so many rappers now like Kendrick, Eminem, Tyler, Travis Scott, and a lot others are doing better numbers than Drake with ease. And if this is the new standard he is setting, then he is only going to continue to decline down
that's
this
going to
list.
decline
and so
a lot.
What the lesson that Drake is going to have to learn from this is that if he wants to ever have any sort of decent success again, he is going to have to learn that he is not bigger than the industry and that he has to be okay with not being in that top tier of artists anymore in terms of who is moving things forward. But even if Drake doesn't want to realize this, as between the support this record got and the numbers it's doing, which overall is showing that Drake has failed and he's not being blocked and suppressed by the industry, his entire case with his label and what he is trying to prove there never looks worse as well, because Drake's numbers have not fallen off to the point where something looks off in terms of the industry having their hand in it. But it only looks like this record just flopped compared to the usual standards he held himself to, because things have changed and people don't care about his music anymore. And so overall, as we are now at a point where after...
You know what really fucked it up? That damn Wangwan Delilah. That's what happens when you pull out some bullshit like that, man. Don't ever make a song like that again, dude. Seriously. Because what the fuck was that?
This beef, Kendrick Lamar has shown that he can make an album that is way more efficient in terms of its track list length, and it's outperforming Drake's record, which is almost double the size. In an industry like this, the more songs you have, the more clearances needed to make music, which then of course means there is a lot more going into what Drake is putting out, which means there is more resources needed. Overall, Kendrick Lamar is showing why he is the best person to lead hip-hop forward, as both an art and in terms of how it will move forward in the industry, because between having the people behind him to just being able to create music that is giving way bigger returns, and that's also using way less, overall, there's really no need for what a guy like Drake is doing, as it is just inefficient and is bringing the entire industry back to a place where hip-hop is stuck and is only declining. And now,
I really hope that Kendrick continues to lead on for this for a long time, so it can actually give other artists that are in his category a chance. Like Denzel Curry, he does not get a lot of streams considering how long he's been in the game. JID, just a couple off the top. IDK, I know he's coming with a new project soon. Westside Gun, people in that kind of stratosphere of hip hop and rap in general. I just hope that steers more people's eyes towards better projects than just the rinse and repeat cycle type of rap that we've been having for the past 10 years. So I'm hoping that those get to a higher tier.
well, when these numbers come out officially, and they may even end up being a little lower, Drake and everyone around him are going to try to make all the narratives they possibly can to explain why they have seen such a big drop-off between all of the major albums they've put out. Don't let this distract you from the fact that even when Drake dragged this project out and made it way longer than it ever had to be, which you can clearly tell based on how many bad and boring songs are on this thing, which of course all of this was done intentionally to give the record the biggest streaming push possible, that even with this, Drake still lost to Kendrick Lamar and so many other MCs and artists, and now with Drake being way down in the industry ladder in terms of what artists are the most valuable with everything going on, as despite the numbers no longer being on his side, his ego has still not changed and he still believes he is the top guy in this thing, all of this is gonna get a lot worse, and it's overall gonna make the disaster that is this album and era of his career have worse effects than we could have ever known. And so now with all this said, let me know, what do you think of the projections from Drake, how he lost to Kendrick, and what do you think is going to happen now that Drake's 20-plus song projects are doing half of what they used to? Well, I can't wait to hear what you have to say, and if you made it to this point in the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, as just as I said earlier, it is more important than ever. Now,
hey, shout out to Fantastic Hip Hop, that was a great video. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and my little insight on the whole thing. Yeah, I'm hoping that Kendrick's reign over the whole streaming platform now can segue other people into it, in his lane, Absol and all them, to actually get more streams and actually be the front of hip hop now as a whole, instead of the how you call it, fast food rap, you know what I'm saying? But, the youth kind of controls that. So, we'll see what happens in the near future. But, hopefully, it just steers more people into that direction of hip-hop. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.